Shelby GT500 is one of my favorite Mustangs. It is a Mustang. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You know, when Carroll Shelby first started building cars, the Shelby Cobras, they were basically a re-engined British car, the AC. And he developed that, and they were an awesome car. They were incredible on the racetracks. He took that sort of thinking and put it into Mustangs. So the 350 Shelby was literally a track car, and it was a car that I think Carroll Shelby really enjoyed for himself. But what happened then was Ford saw the potential there and sort of got involved. And as the more they got involved, the more he was sort of kicked to the curb. When the 500 came out, it had a 428 CJ in it, but there's nothing special about that because, you know, the Shelby was competing against other Mustangs, not just Camaros and AMXs and Javelins and that. It was actually competing against other Mustangs, like the Mach 1 and other, you know, R-Code and Special Mustang. And some of the Mustangs, they were a hard act to beat. You know, the Boss Mustangs were really lethal, you know, potent cars. So when Ford started to get more and more involved in the production of the Shelby cars, they started to give it sort of a luxury spin because at the end of the 60s, the muscle car era was starting to dissipate a little bit. There was pollution controls and everything going on in the cars. And the people who were buying them wanted a little more luxury than they were expecting in, you know, in the mid 60s and that. So it was being turned into a grand touring car. It was losing Shelby's attention. So actually by the end of 1969, I think he had sort of left the company and left it to its own devices. You know, it's a good thing he did because later on, as Mustangs evolved, they got into a bigger body, and not only that, but they became more abundant because of the amount of pollution controls that was being slapped on the engines. So, you know, this is a beautiful car. It is not the distilled, potent weapon that the 350 was. It's more of a grand touring car. Don't get me wrong, my favorite Mustang, but it is a Mustang. When you put a Shelby GT500 next to other Mustangs, it is a bit bigger car, and there's a lot of visual changes. Yes, the main part of the body is the same, but the front is different. Certainly the nose is different. The tail deck on this car and the tail lights are just dramatically different, and actually quite an improvement on the look of a standard Mustang. And I don't know if all Mustangs would look like this and this looked like a Mustang, you know, we'd probably be saying the same thing. But I mean, this back end was immediately recognizable as a Shelby. So there's no doubt these had a special place in the muscle car world, but again, it's a Mustang. People ask me a lot, well, you know, if you were gonna choose a Mustang to have as your personal car, what would you have? This would be the one. I mean, I like it. I love driving these. Yeah, it's not a track car. Don't want a track car. Want a really cool car to take to the cruise night, and this is it. I love the design cues in this. I love the add-on features. And I sort of like the fact it's a little more comfortable. And it's got some really cool features like, you know, like a swing-away steering wheel and things that actually you found in Thunderbirds in it, the higher-end cars that often shared the same engine. Yeah, this car would certainly do. I certainly wouldn't mind spending a weekend driving this to the beach and back. I mean, would you? So here we have the 428 CJ engine. Interestingly enough, while the valve covers on this are appropriate and say 428, the air filter says 427, but it's just a sticker. And I'm pretty sure that unless it's had an engine replacement, you know, which I don't believe it has, this is the 428. You know, you can see how tightly packed these engine compartments were. That was one of the problems with Mustangs. I mean, originally Mustangs were designed as a 6-cylinder grocery getter, as a second car to just sit in the driveway, one for a wife to use during the day while her husband was at work. And, you know, as the muscle car craze developed, the engines got bigger and bigger, but the cars really didn't. So servicing these things became more and more of an issue. As a matter of fact, you know, like not recently, but when I first started restoring cars, I would get Mustangs in, you know, that were 20-year-old cars, and they would still have the original plugs on either side in the middle because nobody had been able to get them out because of the shock towers. So, you know, and they just put up with it. And went, geez, why is my engine misfiring? Well, because you got 25, 30-year-old spark plugs in there, nobody's ever changed them. And that problem hasn't gotten better. I've seen people cut holes in their shock towers. I've seen a lot of different ways of trying to get spark plugs in and out of these things. The easiest well, not the easiest, but really the only way that it's feasible is you just loosen the engine mounts and lift her up high enough that you can get at the damn things. It's a pain in the butt, but you know, the engineer who put this in there, he wasn't thinking about that. So I would actually marry a Shelby GT500. That's how much I like them. Of course, well, this would be the mistress.